Okay, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Wa ba'd, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. All praise and thanks belong to Allah Azza wa Jal, the Lord, creator and sustainer of the heavens and the earth. We place our choicest greetings and blessings upon the most beloved of Allah's creation, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, upon his family members, upon his companions, and upon all of those who follow his blessed way of life until the end of times. Allah Azza wa Jal make us from them. Ameen. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome, inshallah, back to our class on the reading of Ta'zeemul Ilm by Shaykh Sālih bin Abdillāh bin Hamad al-Usaymī, Hafidhahullah, who is a teacher in the Masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this text that we are reading is a text that is taught in the Masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was taught by the Shaykh in a program called, it's a program that deals with Muhimmatul Ilm. The program is called Muhimmatul Ilm, where the Shaykh across over a week or over 10 days, he would cover about 15 mutun, 15 texts, classical texts, foundational texts that each and every student should study. The Waraqat, the Nukhbat al-Fikr, many different texts. Most of the years the text would be the same, but here and there he would change a certain kitab and he would swap it for a different book. And before he would read any of the books, he would teach his own book, which is Ta'zeemul Ilm, because before you're going to start studying 14 texts on Islamic sciences, you need to have the adab and the etiquette, inshallah ta'ala. And so, inshallah ta'ala, because we are planning on studying multiple and many texts, inshallah ta'ala, we've decided to start with this book, inshallah ta'ala. So the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, I'm just going to continue from, start from where we stopped last week, inshallah. The author رحمه الله تعالى says وإنما يختار قال المصنف رحمه الله, the author رحمه الله says وإنما يختار للصحبة من يعاشر للفضيلة لا للمنفعة ولا للذة فإن عقد المعاشرة يبرم على هذه المطالب الثلاثة: الفضيلة والمنفعة واللذة، كما ذكره شيخ شيوخنا محمد الخضر بن حسين في رسائل الإصلاح: فانتخب صديق الفضيلة زميلا فإنك تعرف به. So the author رحمه الله says إنما is يفيد الحصر والقصر، وإنما يختار، إنما بمعنى only، وإنما يختار للصحبة من يعاشر الفضيلة لا للمنفعة ولا للذة. He says they should be chosen للصحبة for, I'm doing a literal translation, right? يختار, they should be chosen للصحبة for companionship. من يعاشر للفضيلة, he will accompany him, he will befriend him for virtue. So the author rahimahullah ta'ala says, when you choose a companion on your path of knowledge, because companions in your path of knowledge is important, as we will learn in the next chapter, or the next title. The next title will speak about mudhakaratul ilm, revising knowledge. And obviously for you to revise knowledge, you need someone to revise with. You need someone to keep you to task, to hold you to account on this path of knowledge. Without having companions around you who are also studying, the path of learning becomes very difficult. So he says, إنما وإنما يختار للصحبة, who should be chosen for companionship? من يعاشر للفضيلة, he should befriend a sahib للفضيلة, for the virtue that he can take from that person, the knowledge and the taqwa and the piety that he can take from that person. لا للمنفعة ولا للذة, he should not take based upon benefit, worldly benefit, nor for enjoyment. He says why? فإن عقد المعاشرة, because bringing about friendship يبرم is based على هذه المطالب الثلاثة. It is based upon these three demands or functions. الفضيلة, either you befriend that person because of the knowledge and the virtue that you can take from that person. والمنفعة, or it is because of the worldly benefit that you can get from that person. واللذة, or the enjoyment. And he says choose the one that has fadila. And this he says كما ذكره شيخ شيوخنا, as the teacher of our teachers. So not his teacher, the teacher of our teachers, Muhammad al-Khidr bin Hussein في رسائل الإصلاح, mentions this. And he was a Tunisian Algerian scholar that was the Shaykh al-Azhar. فانتخب, so Shaykh Sālih says فانتخب, انتخب ينتخب انتخاب, فانتخب, so choose صديق الفضيلة, the companion and the friend of virtue. Zamilan as a companion on this path of knowledge. فَإِنَّكَ تُعْرَفُ بِهِ because you will be known through him. You will be known through him. The author rahimahullah then quotes Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala an, الصحابي الجليل. Just want to see if there's anything that okay, skip that. He quotes Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Abdullah bin Mas'ud said, اعتبروا الرجل بمن يصاحبه. Look at the man بمن يصاحبه. Who he صاحب يصاحب مصاحبة, who he accompanies. Look at the man who he accompanies. Look at whom a person accompanies. Why? فإنما يصاحب الرجل من هو مثله. Because a person will only accompany who من هو مثله. مفعول به من هو مثله, those who are like him. That entire من هو مثله becomes the مفعول به. And then he quotes a poem, وأنشد أبو الفتح البستي لنفسه. Abu al-Fath al-Busti, he recited some words of poetry and for himself. And we gave you all the details. Where do these quotes come from? Who's Abu al-Fath al-Busti? He says, إذا ما اصطنعت امرأ فليكن. إذا ما اصطنعت, if you choose imra'an. Imra'an means a person. If you choose a person. If you befriend a person, فليكن, then he must be. كان يكون, the فعل الأمر is كن. The فليكن is the فعل الأمر غائب. فعل الأمر غائب. He must be. فليكن. ليكن. ليكن, but when you add the fa, it becomes فليكن. فليكن, he must be شريف النجار زكي الحسب. He should be of noble origin and of pure status. فنذل الرجال كنذل النبات. Because lowly men are like lowly plants. You know, plants that you want to remove. That's a nuisance. He says, فَنَذْلُ الرِّجَالِ, lowly men, خسيس. نذل بمعنى خسيس. Lowly men are like lowly plants. فَلَا لِلثِّمَارِ وَلَا لِلْحَطَبِ. He says, because they do not give fruit, nor do they give wood. Meaning these plants, you benefit nothing from them. Similarly, there are certain people that you need to avoid as they do not benefit you, as they do not benefit you in the least. He then goes on and he says, وَيَقُولُ ابْنُ مَانِعٍ. Ibn Mani', who he describes, Muhammad bin Mani', who he described in the earlier chapter as Shaykh Shuyukhina, the teacher of our teachers, a Saudi scholar that died in the 1950s. He says in his book, Irshad al-Tullab, which is a book also on the etiquette of knowledge, and it's called Irshad al-Tullab ila al-ilmi wal-amal wal-adab, or ila fadilat al-ilmi wal-amal wal-adab. Guiding the tulab towards ilm, knowledge, or the virtue of knowledge, the virtue of action and practicing on that knowledge, والآداب and etiquettes. وهو يوصي طالب العلم. وهو واو, the واو here is واو حالية. حال كونه موصيا طالب العلم. وهو, whilst he is advising the student of knowledge. He was saying, so he's saying whilst advising the students of knowledge, وَيَحْذَرُ كُلَّ الْحَذَرِ, and he should avoid كُلَّ الْحَذَرِ. This is the مفعول مطلق, completely. You can't, if you translate it literally, you should avoid complete avoidance. That's the literal translation. But it doesn't make, it doesn't sound right if you translate it like that. وَيَحْذَرُ كُلَّ الْحَذَرِ, he should avoid completely من مخالطة السفهاء, from mixing. مخالطة means خالط يخالط, مخالطة وخلاطا means to mix. He should avoid mixing with the sufaha, with the foolish people. وأهل المجون, the people who are crazy. والوقاحة, the people of who are disrespectful, uncultured. وقاحة, the people of bad manners. والسيء السمعة. سيئي, who can tell me what's the nahu by سيئي? Why is it سيئي? So we said it is sayyi'un. Sayyi'un, sayyi'un. That's the singular. Sayyi'una, by adding the waw and the nun, you make it jam. When it becomes majroor, it becomes sayyi'ina. Because he said min mukhalatati sufahai wa ahli al-mujuni wal waqahati. والسيئين becomes والسيئين. Then when it becomes مضاف مضاف إليه, the noon drops. وسيئي السمعة. We say this every day. Or the Khatib says it. من سيئات. سيئ وسيئة. سيئون and سيئات. من سيئات. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا والسيئات. سيئات, where the at is the jam of سيئة, and سيئون is the jam of سيئون. والسيئ السمعة. Those people, سيئي means bad, evil, and sum'ah means what we hear about them. Evil things are heard about them. والأغبياء, foolish people. أغبي this is a common word that they use in the Middle East. They call each other, ya ghabi. Like if you do something wrong, they'll say, oh, stupid person. Wal bulada, idiots. Tullab al-ilm should avoid these people. Because when when you mix with people like this, their behavior has an impact on you. فَإِنَّ مُخَالَطَتَهُمْ. So this is the ismu inna. Because mixing with them, sababul hirmani, this is the khabr, everything that follows after this is the khabru inna. Sababul hirmani is the cause of deprivation of knowledge and barakah of ilm. Wa shaqawatil insani. And it is the cause of the deprivation and the unfortunate nature of a person. A person becoming shaqi, unfortunate. That's a literal translation. The author rahimahullah ta'ala continues and he says, وكأن هذا عين قول سفيان بن عيينة. And وكأن هذا, كأن the هذا is the ismu inna, and the عين قول سفيان بن عيينة is the khabru inna. And it is as if this is exactly like the statement of Sufyan ibn Uyayna when he said, إني لا أحرم جلسائي. Who can tell me what do you call that lam over there? We mentioned it last week. What do you call it?
ليس لام مزحلقة ولا؟
Allah, mashallah, mashallah. إني لا أحرم جلسائي. Indeed, I deprive my julasa. Julasa is the plural of jalis. My sitting companions, the people that I sit with. I deprive my sitting companions of what? Of al-hadith al-gharib. I deprive them from hearing a hadith al-gharib. ما معنى hadith al-gharib? Hadith al-gharib could mean, yeah, the scholars say it could mean a hadith with a uncommon meaning, or a hadith with a high sanad. So he says, إني لأحرم جلسائي الحديث الغريبة. مفعول أول جلسائي, but you can't see the fatha because of the ya, جلسائي. And the مفعول ثاني is the مركب توصيفي الحديث الغريبة. I deprive my companions of a gharib hadith. Why? لموضع رجل واحد ثقيل. لموضع رجل. Because of the presence of a man, of one man, who is thaqil, who, have you heard the British saying, when they say you are as, I want to sound politically correct over here. If they call you a log, what do they mean, like a log?
It means like you thick, man, like
You're thick, yeah. You're thick. That's
Toast.
exactly. He's thick, meaning he's balid. So he says, because of the presence of a thick man amongst them. Meaning, literally, someone who won't understand the purport of what I'm saying, the meaning of what I'm saying. So I deprive. So the scholars say, subhanAllah, look at that. Yeah, one of the great scholars of hadith, one of the atba tabi'in, one of the great masters of hadith. He says, I deprive my companions from narrating a particular hadith to them. Why? Because of the presence of one man among them. Then Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī, hafidhahullah, he then commentates on this. He gives sharh. He said, فَقَدْ يُحْرَمُ الْمُتَعَلِّمُ الْعِلْمَ sometimes. قد يا بمعنى للتقليل. فقد يحرم. قد, if it's used with a مضارع verb, then it has a certain meaning. When it's used with a ماضي verb, it has a different meaning. فقد يحرم المتعلم. Sometimes a متعلم, a student, is deprived العلم of knowledge. Why? المتعلم is نائب الفاعل الأول, so it is مرفوع. العلم is نائب الفاعل الثاني, so it is منصوب. فقد يحرم المتعلم. يحرم is the مجهول of حرم يحرم. فقد يحرم المتعلم العلم. Sometimes a student is deprived العلم of knowledge. Why? لأجل صاحبه, because of his companion. فاحذر هذا الصنف. So he says حذر يحذر احذر. He gives an أمر. فاحذر, beware of this صنف, of this category. وإن تزي بزي العلم. Even if he adorns him with the clothing of knowledge. You know, he puts on the jubba. He looks like a talib al-ilm. فَإِنَّهُ يُفْسِدُكَ. Because أفسد يفسد إفساد. He will corrupt you. He will cause you fasad. He will bring you corruption. He will corrupt you. من حيث لا تحس. From a place that you لا تحس, do not know and suspect. أحس يحس إحساس. The author رحمه الله تعالى then continues and he says, المعقد الثالث عشر. المعقد الثالث عشر. Who can tell me why is it الثالث عشر? Why is it not الثالث عشر? It's مبني على الفتح. So المعقد الثالث العشر. Is that correct or is it wrong? So it serves as a sifa. So it's supposed to agree with the word معقد. المعقد الثالث عشر. The 13th. The 13th معقد. The 13th fundamental principle من معاقد تعظيم العلم. We said, what is a معقد? The author رحمه الله in the مقدمة الكتاب, he gave the definition. He said, a معقد is أصول, principles جامعة that are comprehensive, محققة عظمة العلم في قلب طالب العلم. That those principles that bring about the greatness of knowledge in the heart of the student. He then says, this principle is بذل الجهد في تحفظ العلم والمذاكرة به والسؤال عنه. He mentions three things. He says بذل الجهد. That's مضاف مضاف إليه. Expanding, giving, spending a lot of جهد, effort. في تحفظ العلم. في تحفظ العلم. In memorizing knowledge, but here he doesn't use the word حفظ. He uses the word تحفظ. Who can tell me why is he putting it on باب تفعل يتفعل تفعلا?
Maulana, anything on the first girl can assume takalluf or some type of burden when being carried out with that.
Exactly. So anything that is on bab تفعل يتفعل تفعلا, anything that is in bab تفعل يتفعل تفعلا, there's a type of struggle in there. في تحفظ العلم, in his effort of memorizing knowledge. So spending جهد, effort, expanding it. في تحفظ العلم, in memorizing and struggling and putting in effort to memorize knowledge. والمذاكرة به, and revising knowledge. مذاكرة comes from باب فاعل يفاعل مفاعلة وفعالا. ذاكر يذاكر مذاكرة وذكارا. Because it is there is فيه مشاركة. And this is where your companion comes in, the person who revises knowledge with you. مذاكرة. والسؤال عنه, and asking about it. Asking the ulama. So memorizing, revising with your companions, and also asking the ulama about it. Just give me a few seconds, inshallah. Okay. The author rahimahullah ta'ala then continues and he says, can anyone wants to read, inshallah? Bismillah. Abu David, inshallah. Faddal, read.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال المصنف رحمه الله: المقعد الثالث عشر: بذل الجهد في تحفظ العلم ومذاكرة به والسؤال عنه، إذ تلقيه عن الشيوخ لا ينفع بلا حفظ له ومذاكرة به وسؤال عنه، فهؤلاء تحقق في قلب طالب العلم تعظيمه بكمال الالتفات إليه واشتغال به. فالحفظ خلوة بالنفس، والمذاكرة جلوس إلى القرين، والسؤال إقبال على العالم. فبالحفظ يقرر العلم في القلب، وينبغي أن يكون جل همة الطالب مصروفا إلى الحفظ والإعادة، كما يقول ابن الجوزي في صيد الخاطر: ولم يزل العلماء أعلام يحضون على الحفظ ويأمرون به. قال عبيد الله بن حسن: وجدت أحضر العلم منفعة ما وعيته بقلبي.
Okay. The author rahimahullah says, إذ تلقيه عن الشيوخ. He says, تلقى يتلقى تلقيا. تلقي means to receive knowledge, to take knowledge. إذ تلقيه, take, receiving it, receiving knowledge. That's مضاف إليه. عن الشيوخ, from teachers. لا ينفع, does not benefit. Receiving knowledge, can you guys see on the screen? Can you see the book in front of you? Okay. إذ تلقيه, because receiving it عن الشيوخ from teachers لا ينفع, will not benefit بلا حفظ له, without memorizing it. ومذاكرة به, ومذاكرة, and revising it. والسؤال عنه, and asking questions about this knowledge. So the author rahimahullah in this chapter, he is summarizing the three fundamental principles. أصول في أخذ العلم, the principles of acquiring knowledge. أولا أحدهما تحفظ العلم, memorizing knowledge. ثانيها مذاكرته, أي مدارسته مع الأقران, revising it with your companions and your colleagues. ثالثها السؤال عنه, الاستفهام عنه من أهله, asking questions about this knowledge from the people of knowledge. Then the author rahimahullah ta'ala, he then goes into each one explaining the benefits of each step and each process. He says, فَهَؤُلَاءِ, these things, these, because there are three things, تحفظ, مذاكرة, and سؤال. فهؤلاء, these things, تحقق, حقق يحقق تحقيق, they bring about في قلب طالب العلم, in the heart of the student of knowledge, تعظيمه, the greatness of knowledge. فهؤلاء, these three things, حقق يحقق التحقيق, they bring about the reality في قلب طالب العلم, in the heart of the student of knowledge, تعظيمه, the greatness of knowledge. بكمال الالتفات إليه, by completely turning your attention to it, والاشتغال به, and by busying yourself with it. فالحفظ, he says, memorization of knowledge, خلوة بالنفس, it is being alone with yourself. When you're memorizing, you are alone with yourself. والمذاكرة, revising of knowledge, is جلوس إلى القرين, sitting with a قرين, with a partner, with a colleague. والسؤال, and asking about this knowledge, what does this mean, what does that mean? إقبال على العالم, it is going to the scholar. He then says فبالحفظ, through حفظ, يقرر العلم في القلب, knowledge becomes embedded and firmly implanted in the heart. وينبغي, and it is befitting, ويصح, وينبغي, ويجمل, أن يكون جل همة الطالب. So the اسم كان, أن يكون جل همة الطالب, most of the attention of the student, خبر كان, مصروفا, should be turned and spent إلى الحفظ, in memorization, والإعادة. and revising. كما يقوله ابن الجوزي رحمه الله تعالى, as Ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah mentions in his Sayd al-Khatir. When we mention Ibn al-Jawzi and we mention about his book, Sayd al-Khatir. He then says, وَلَمْ يَزَلِ الْعُلَمَاءُ الْأَعْلَامُ, the noble scholars, the notable ulama, the notable a'lam is the sifa of ulama. Alam, a'lam. The notable scholars, that's a murakkab tawsifi. The notable scholars continuously يحضون على الحفظ. They continuously حض يحض, encourage على الحفظ, memorization, ويأمرون به, and order with it and command with it and instruct with it. And now he's going to bring some of the statements of the ulama of the past. قال عبيد الله بن الحسن, عبيد الله بن الحسن رحمه الله said, وجدت, he says, I found أحضر العلم منفعة. أحضر العلم, knowledge should be, when someone asks you, it's حاضر. I found that أحضر العلم, if you literally translate it, it means I found the most present knowledge, the knowledge that quickly comes to mind, manfa'atan, in benefit. That's the literal translation. What it means is that which quickly comes to mind. أحضر العلم means, yeah, it's a ismu tafdil. I found the knowledge that quickly presents itself in my mind, manfa'atan, in benefit. Who can tell me what's that word manfa'atan, what's the i'rab and what's the nahu behind manfa'atan? So we know why it's أحضر العلمي, because it's the maf'ul of وجدت.
Is it possible that it's tamyiz?
Yes, it could be tamyiz. وجدت أحضر العلم منفعة. I found the knowledge that is أحضر, that is quickly present. The knowledge that is أحضر أسرعه, that is the quickest, that comes quickest to mind. أسرعه حضورا, in benefit. So it could be that وجد يجد is also of those verbs that have two maf'uls. وجدت الرجل عالما. So he says, I found that the most present of knowledge, the quickest knowledge that comes to mind in benefit to me is what? ما وعيته بقلبي. وعى يعي. ما وعيته, that which I've memorized with my heart. وَلُقْتُهُ, and I have said it, I've moved with it. لُقْتُهُ. لَاكَ يَلُوكُ means to chew something. I've chewed it. I've moved my tongue with it. وَلُقْتُهُ بِلِسَانِ. So he's giving you the qawaid of hifz. The qawaid of hifz is that if you want to memorize something, you need to raise your voice. You need to raise your voice. Because when you're raising your voice and you're repeating it, it sticks in the mind. This is the qawaid of hifz. So he says, Ubaydullah bin al-Hasan, right? He says this. Who was Ubaydullah bin al-Hasan? He was born in the year 100 or the year 106, and he died in the year 168. He was from the scholars that lived in the period of the Abbasites, and he heard hadith from many great scholars of hadith, and also many great scholars of hadith such as the famous Abdullah bin Mahdi heard hadith from him. And this you can find in this statement you can find in Al-Jami li Akhlaq al-Rawi wa Adab al-Sami' by Khatib al-Baghdadi rahimahullah ta'ala. So the ulama state, he says, and that's what the ulama are saying, they say, knowledge is that which you have in the toilet with you. Meaning you are able to recall that knowledge without books. You can't take books in the toilet, right? So the scholars of the past used to say, knowledge is that which you have with you when you're in the hammam. Hammam means a It's like in the past, the word hammam was like a place where people, a public place where people take a shower, right? Knowledge is that which you have in the hammam with you, meaning a place where you don't take books with you, meaning it's in your memory. So Ubaidullah ibn al-Hasan, rahimahullah ta'ala said, وجدت, I found, أحضر العلم منفعة أسرعه, that which is أسرعه حضورا, that which comes the quickest to my memory, منفعة, in benefit, ما وعيته بقلبي, that which I've memorized it with my heart. ولقته, لا يلوك لقته, and I have uttered it بلساني, with my tongue. So he's giving you the qawaid of memorizing knowledge. Two things. The scholars say, al-ain, the eye, بإمضاء البصر في المحفوظ, by looking at the thing that you memorize. So if you want to memorize something, a part of the Quran, look at it and read it, say 100 times. And the other one is the ear. The ear, by raising the voice, you are hearing it, and then it settles in the heart. So when you want to memorize, say it out loud. Don't say it softly. Don't memorize softly. When you want to understand something, then lower your voice when reading it. So when you try to make out sense of something, you read it softly to yourself, and this will aid you in trying to understand it. Because raising the voice when you're trying to read something and understand it will cause some type of confusion. So when you memorize, you raise your voice, and when you try to understand, lower your voice. So he says, قال عبيد الله بن الحسن, عبيد الله بن الحسن said, وجدت أحضر العلم منفعة ما وعيته بقلبي ولقته بلساني. He then says, وسمعت شيخنا ابن أثيمين. Now Shaykh ibn Usaymī rahimahullah ta'ala was a contemporary scholar, a scholar of our times. Shaykh ibn Usaymī rahimahullah was a scholar of our time. Who can tell me in which period did Shaykh ibn Usaymī rahimahullah live? And when did he die?
I know he died 2001.
Yes, he died in 2001. And he was born in the year 1929. So what age was he? 1929 till 2001 is what? He died at which age?
72.
Okay. So his full name was Muhammad bin Sālih al-Usaymīn. Muhammad, the son of Sālih al-Usaymīn, and he's commonly known as Shaykh ibn Usaymīn. He was a scholar, a Saudi scholar, very well-known Saudi scholar, who was very prolific in regards to teaching. And what they did was, he taught for, if he was 72, he probably taught for 50 years. Started very young. Things started in his teens teaching. His teacher was Shaykh Abdillāh bin Nasir al-Sa'di, rahimahullah, who was the imam of that masjid in Unayza in Riyadh, right? In Qasim. When his teacher died, he took over the position of his teacher as the main imam of the Jami Masjid, Jami Unayza. And he took it over, I think he was 20 years old when he took it over, 21, 22. And for the next 50 years, he taught. And he's actually got a mu'assasa, a foundation in, if you Google it, Mu'assasa Ibn Uthaymin, you will find on the internet, it's a beautiful building. They made the building, the look of the building is like books. It's made into books, right? So what they did is, because he taught for 50 years, there is not a book, except that he taught the book. So what they had his top students, all right, transcribe and listen to the lectures, and then transcribe it into book form. So he's got like an explanation Sahih al-Bukhari, but he never wrote an explanation Sahih al-Bukhari. It's the tafrigh. They took the lectures, listened to it, and wrote and typed it out. He's got explanation Sahih Muslim. He's got Bulugh al-Maram, Riyad al-Salihin, Waraqat, Nukhbat al-Fikr, Baykuniyya, whatever book, Ajrumiyya, Qatr al-Nada, Mulhat al-I'rab, whatever book you can possibly think of. You can go on his website, you can see all his books, and you can download the PDFs. And even if you go to the Muassasa in Unayza and you say that you are a student, probably a Saudi student studying one of the Saudi universities, you can get many of his books for free. It's volumes and volumes of books. And I've got many of his books, alhamdulillah. I have example, I have his explanation on Zad al-Mustaqni, which is an intermediate Hanbali text, right? And it's almost, that sharh is almost like, yeah, it's in 10 volumes. His sharh on Sahih al-Bukhari is 10 volumes. Sahih Muslim is about 10 volumes. I've got Bulugh al-Maram, that's in 10 volumes. He has Umdatul Ahkam. He's got like detail. So the Shaykh was a leading Hanbali scholar from the region of Najd in Saudi Arabia. Very, very well-known scholar. So he says, so Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī says, I heard my teacher, وَسَمِعْتُ شَيْخَنَا, I heard our teacher, Ibn Usaymīn. Ibn Usaymīn because it's the badal of Shaykhana. I heard our teacher saying, حَفِظْنَا قَلِيلًا. He said, we memorized a little. وَقَرَأْنَا كَثِيرًا, and we read a lot. فَانْتَفَعْنَا بِمَا حَفِظْنَا, but we benefited what we memorized أكثر, more than من انتفاعنا, than what we have benefited بما قرأنا, than that which we have read. So we benefited more from that which we have memorized than that which we have, more than that which we have read. So he says, سمعت شيخنا ابن عثيمين رحمه الله تعالى يقول, حفظنا قليلا, we memorized a little, وقرأنا كثيرا, and we read a lot. فانتفعنا بما حفظنا أكثر, مفعول أكثر من انتفاعنا, then us benefiting بما قرأنا, that which we read. The author rahimahullah ta'ala then quotes a line, and I quoted this line when we started the class. It comes in Sayyid al-Khatir of Ibn al-Jawzi. It says, ليس بعلم ما حوى الكمطر ما العلم إلا ما حواه الصدر. ليس بعلم, it is not knowledge. ليس بعلم, it is not knowledge. What is not knowledge? ما حوى الكمطر, that which the contain. A kimatr is like a little bag where they put papers and books in. It's like what we would call a bag today, a satchel, right? He says, laysa bi'ilmin. The bi'ilmin is the khabar. The ismu laysa is the ma hawal kimatru. That which the kimatru, that which the bag, hawa, contains, laysa bi'ilmin, is not knowledge. Mal ilmu, knowledge is nothing but illa ma hawa sadru, except that which the chest contains, i.e. that which is memorized. That which is memorized. This comes in, I said Sayyid al-Khatir, sorry, this comes in Sayyid al-Khatir. It comes in Sayyid al-Khatir. It was said by Al-Khalil bin Ahmad al-Farahidi, the great scholar of Arabic. Al-Khalil bin Ahmad al-Farahidi. Comes in Sayyid al-Khatir. The author rahimahullah ta'ala then continues and he says, وَالْمُتَلَمِّسُ لِلْعِلْمِ لَا يَسْتَغْنِي عَنِ الْحِفْظِ. المتلمس, ما معنى المتلمس؟ ما معنى المتلمس؟ تلمس يتلمس تلمسا, فهو متلمس.
The one that is seeking, Maulana.
The one that is seeking. The one that is seeking. من سلك طريقا يلتمس فيه علما. والمتلمس للعلم, the one seeking knowledge, لا يستغني عن الحفظ, cannot do without حفظ, cannot turn away from حفظ, cannot do without حفظ عن الحفظ. وَلَا يَجْمُلُ بِهِ. Shaykh Sālih says, and it is not good for him أن يخلي نفسه منه. أخلى يخلي. إخلاء means to make yourself empty. To be khali, to be empty. It is not good for him to empty himself from it, meaning to avoid it, to not do it. وإذا قدر على ما كان يصنع ابن الفرات فليأخذ به. He says, if he is able, إذا كان, if he is able, إذا قدر, if he is able, على ما كان, to do ما كان يصنع ابن الفرات, that which Ibn al-Farat used to do, فليأخذ به, then he should take it, he should do it, فليفعله, he should do it. What did Ibn al-Farat do? فقد كان لا يترك كل يوم, he would not leave every day, he would not abandon, إذا أصبح, أي إذا دخل في الصباح, when he entered morning, أن يحفظ شيئا, to memorize something, وإن قل. No one here can say, I can't memorize one verse of the Quran. Everyone can memorize one verse of the Quran. No one can say, there's a long hadith, but I can memorize one sentence of the hadith every day. It's just like, we make isti'jal of knowledge. We want everything now. If I can't acquire it now, everything, I'm not trying to memorize a hadith, a long hadith over 5 weeks is too long, man. I don't want to, that's too long. I want to know the hadith now. We consider the path of knowledge too long. We want everything now, and if you can't get everything now, we don't do it. Ibn al-Furat used to memorize something small every day. So he says all of us can do that. Maybe we take the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala and say, you know what? The first hadith I know it, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِنِيَّةٍ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ. The second hadith of Jibreel is a bit long. I'm going to take one jumla every day and memorize it of that hadith. In a month and a half, if you memorize slow, you will know that hadith. But it takes too much effort. And we want to make isti'jal of ilm. And we know what the qa'idah says, مَنِ اسْتَعْجَلَ شَيْئًا قَبْلَ أَوَانِهِ عُوقِبَ بِحِرْمَانِهِ. So he says, وَالْمُتَلَمِّسُ لِلْعِلْمِ لَا يَسْتَغْنِي عَنِ الْحِفْظِ وَلَا يَجْمُلُ بِهِ. Nor is it befitting for him أن يخلي نفسه. أخلى يخلي إخلاء أن يخلي نفسه منه, to empty himself from it. وإذا قدر على ما كان يصنع ابن الفرات رحمه الله تعالى فليأخذ به. فليأخذ به. Who was Ibn al-Farat? Ibn al-Farat was Ahmad ibn al-Farat bin Khalid al-Razi. He was the muhaddith of Asbahan. He's one of the great students of hadith and scholars of hadith. He was born around the year 180 in the Khilafah of Harun al-Rashid. And he traveled to many lands, to Sham, to Hijaz, to Yemen, where he met major scholars. He heard hadith from Abu Dawud at-Tayalisi, Yahya bin Adam, Ja'far bin Aun, Ya'la bin Ubaid, and many other scholars of hadith. So he was a prolific scholar of hadith. His hadiths can be found in the Sunan of Abu Dawud, Abu Bakr bin Asim, Muhammad bin Yahya ibn Manda's book. His hadith can be found in many books of hadith. So he was a prolific hadith narrator, Abu Mas'ud Ahmad bin al-Furat bin Khalid al-Razi, the muhaddith of Asbahan. So this muhaddith, every morning he would memorize, even if it's something small. وَإِذَا قَدِرَ عَلَى مَا كَانَ يَصْنَعُ ابن الفرات فليأخذ به. فقد كان لا يترك كل يوم إذا أصبح أن يحفظ شيئا وإن قل. وإن قل. Okay. So if you're old example and you're memorizing slowly, you can't tell me you can't memorize one ayah every day. As long as you have your intellect, you can memorize. A few months ago, a few months ago, I saw a guy of 60 years old that completed his Hifdh al-Quran in Hanover Park. 60 plus. So there's no excuse. He says, وَمَنْ عَقَلَ هَذَا الْمَعْنَى, and whoever understands this meaning, this concept of memorizing something small, but he memorizes every day, لم يزل من الحفظ في ازدياد. He will continuously to memorize and في ازدياد, and he will increase. He will continuously من الحفظ pertaining to memorization, he will be في ازدياد, in increase. He will only just memorize more. فلا ينقطع عنه حتى الموت, and he will not stop it. فلا ينقطع عنه from it, عنه عن الحفظ حتى الموت, until death. كما اتفق ذلك لابن مالك. Like that happened, اتفق ذلك أي حدث, it happened لابن مالك رحمه الله تعالى صاحب الألفية النحوية. The name of the book is الخلاصة في النحو. We mentioned the biography of Ibn Malik. This happened to Ibn Malik رحمه الله صاحب الألفية النحوية. فإنه حفظ في يوم موته, on the day he memorized, on the day of his death, خمسة شواهد. خمسة شواهد. Who can tell me what's شواهد? What's shawahid? A shahid? Anyone? So a shawahid, shawahid is the plural of shahid. A shahid is a verse of poetry or verse of the Quran or hadith in which a particular grammar rule is applied. So if you quote a grammar rule and then you quote an ayah of the Quran to show a person this is where the grammar rule is being applied, or a hadith and you quote this is where the grammar rule is applied, or poetry and this is where the grammar rule is applied, this is called a shahid, or and the plural is shawahid. So that's why in the books of grammar they will bring, or like example, we studied balagha, al-balaghatul wadiha, right? And the authors of the book will bring the rules of balagha, and then they will bring lots of shawahid examples. All right? Ibn al-Jawzi rahimahullah ta'ala memorized the 10 qira'at after he was 80 plus when he memorized the 10 qira'at. Ibn Hisham, the famous Nahwi, he was Shafi'i in his fiqh and then he became a Hanbali. And then when he was old, he memorized the Mukhtasar al-Khiraqi in Hanbali fiqh. So even if it is little, and that's why the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah Azza wa Jal loves a deed. When a person does it, وَإِنْ قَلْ, Allah Azza wa Jal loves a deed that is done with continuity. Allah loves a deed that is done with continuity. وَإِنْ قَلَّ أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلَّ. The most beloved deeds to Allah Azza wa Jal are those that are done with, that you do continuously, وَإِنْ قَلَّ, even though they might be little. And that same principle can be applied to طالب العلم. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us understanding. The author rahimahullah ta'ala, after speaking about importance of ahammiyatul hifz, he goes on to ahammiyatul mudhakara, mudhakaratul ilm. He says, وَبِالْمُذَاكَرَةِ تَدُومُ حَيَاةُ الْعِلْمِ فِي النَّفْسِ وَيَقْوَى تَعَلُّقُهُ بِهَا وَالْمُرَادْ بِالْمُذَاكَرَةِ مُدَارَسَةُ الْأَقْرَانِ. He says, through mudhakara, through revising this knowledge with a colleague, with a companion. And that's why it's important, example like you guys in South Africa, that when you have time or you have friends, to take whatever you're studying and to revise it with each other, go over it again. Because sometimes you misunderstood something, sometimes you did not understand something, and your friend will remind you. And that's why we call it in the madrasa system, what do we call it? The importance of takrar and mutala'a. Now, generally, mutala should be done with a takrar, should be done with a group, because you might misunderstand certain things, you might not have understood certain things. And al-ilm bayna talabith, knowledge is among the students. They will explain. Sometimes the student explains it better than the teacher. So the author rahimahullah says the second point of knowledge is wabil mudhakarati, and through mudhakara تدوم حياة العلم, the life of knowledge continues في النفس, in the soul. ويقوى تعلقه بها, and its connection أي تعلق العلم becomes stronger بها بالنفس. والمراد بالمذاكرة, what is meant by مذاكرة is مدارسة الأقران, studying together with أقران, with colleagues and companions. دارس يدارس مدارسة, that hadith, that word comes in the hadith. ما اجتمع قوم في بيت. No, yeah, that's it. يتدارسون. But it's the same meaning. ما اجتمع قوم في بيت من بيوت الله يتلون كتاب الله ويتدارسونه بينهم. يتدارسون. مدارسة الأقران. وقد أمرنا. Shaykh Sālih says, وقد أمرنا. We were commanded. أمر يأمر وأمر يؤمر وأمرنا. We were ordered and instructed بتعاهد القرآن. We were instructed. تعاهد means to take care. بتعاهد القرآن, by to take care of the Quran, to revise the Quran. الذي هو أيسر العلوم, which is the easiest of all علوم and sciences. So we were ordered بتعاهد القرآن الذي هو أيسر العلوم. قال البخاري رحمه الله تعالى في صحيحه. إمام البخاري رحمه الله says in his صحيح, قال حدثنا عبد الله بن يوسف. عبد الله بن يوسف is the teacher of Imam al-Bukhari. قال أخبرنا مالك النافع عن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إنما مثل صاحب القرآن كمثل صاحب الإبل المعلقة إن عاهد عليها أمسكها وإن أطلقها ذهبت. ورواه مسلم من حديث مالك به نحوه. Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala says in his Sahih, he says حدثنا Abdullah bin Yusuf. He's the teacher of Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah. He says قال حدثنا Abdullah bin Yusuf. Abdullah bin Yusuf says قال أخبرنا مالك. Who can tell me what's the difference between حدث? Is there a difference between حدثنا, because Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah says قال حدثنا Abdullah, then he says قال أخبرنا مالك. Who can tell me what's the difference between حدثنا and أخبرنا?
Maulana, isn't the one when the teacher reads, or the other one is when the student reads?
So generally أخبرنا, yes, is when it is من لفظ الشيخ, when the teacher reads, exactly, حدثنا. Alright? And then أخبرنا is when someone else reads. Alright? So the scholars say حدثنا is من لفظ الشيخ, when the teacher reads, and أخبرنا is when the teacher reads or someone else reads and he approves of that. So it's more general. And some just say حدثنا أخبرنا is basically examples of the same thing. That's examples of the same thing. So he says قال حدثنا Abdullah bin Yusuf. Abdullah bin Yusuf narrated to us. Abdullah bin Yusuf was the teacher of Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah. He died in the year 218. He's famously known as Abdullah bin Yusuf at-Tanisi. And he's also a narrator of the Muwatta of Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. One of the Ruwat Anil Malik that narrates the Muwatta from Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala. Abdullah bin Yusuf at-Tanisi died in the year 218 من رواة الموطأ, موطأ الإمام مالك رحمه الله تعالى. He's من أثبات الشاميين. He's from the reliable ulama and of hadith of Ash-Sham. Alright? So he says قال حدثنا عبد الله بن يوسف قال أخبرنا مالك النافع عن ابن عمر. That Malik النافع عن ابن عمر, what do we call that? What do some scholars call that? This is according to Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah silsilatul dhahab, the golden chain. Malik from the Nafi was the freed slave of Abdullah bin Umar, and Nafi narrated it from Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu ta'ala. Now, the concept of silsilatul dhahab, the most authentic chain ever to exist, this is something that differs from scholar to scholar. And that's why Imam Nawawi rahimahullah said, we can't say that there is something called asahul asanid, the most authentic of all chains. Rather, we can say, in relation to this alim, or in relation to this place, this is the most authentic chain. In relation to that place or that sheikh, that's the most authentic chain. But according to Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah, this is the most authentic chain that you can find. Malik al-Nafi' an Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu. So he says, and Rasulullah sallallahu, the Prophet said, إنما مثل صاحب القرآن, the example of the companion of the Quran. The Prophet didn't say the Hafidh al-Quran. The Prophet said the Sahib al-Quran. And that's why the scholars say this refers to someone who looks into the Mus'haf a lot and reads it, and to someone who has memorized the Quran. He said the example of Sahib al-Quran, of the companion of the Quran, مثل صاحب القرآن, is like the example of صاحب الإبل المعلقة, is like the example of the owner of tied up camels. Why do you tie up the camel? Because if you don't tie up the camel or you don't keep it in a certain place, the camel will run away. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned the example of the camel. Why? Because from among all the domesticated animals, the camel has the most nufur. It's the wildest among them. And it's something that when it runs away, it's difficult to get it back. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ made the example of the Quran, and the one who's connected to the Quran, the student of the Quran, he made that example with that of the camel. In ahada alayha, if he ahada alayha, this is jumla shartiya, if he takes care of it, i.e. he revises it, amsakaha. Here the Prophet is speaking about the camel, but the Prophet wants you to get the understanding of the Quran as well. In ahada, if he takes care of of the camels, he will keep it. He will have it. وَإِنْ أَطْلَقَهَا, if he releases it, ذَهَبَتْ, it will run away. So similarly, the Quran is such that if the Quran is not revised, even if you read Quran, after 5 months of not reading Quran, your tongue and everything, you'll start reading the letters wrong and stuff like that. So if he takes, but the more you read, the more fluency you pick up on your tongue. In ahad alayha amsakaha, wa in atlaqaha dhahabat. So the author rahimahullah ta'ala, in ahad alayha is jumla shartiyya, wa in atlaqaha dhahabat, that's jumla, that's a shart wa jaza'uhu. So the author rahimahullah ta'ala is speaking about the importance of revision. The author rahimahullah is speaking about revision. Then he says, وَرَوَاهُ Muslim. Imam Muslim rahimahullah narrates this hadith from Malik as well. نحوه, similar to it. But Imam Muslim rahimahullah doesn't bring it from Abdullah bin Yusuf. Imam Muslim rahimahullah brings it from Yahya bin Bakr at-Tamimi al-Handali al-Naysaburi, who we spoke about earlier, who was born in the year 142 and died in the year 226, who traveled to Hijaz and to Iraq and to Sham and to Egypt, who was known for his beautiful face and his lengthy beard. Imam Muslim rahimahullah narrates it from a different teacher. He says, وَقَدْ أُمِرْنَا بِتَعَهُدِ الْقُرْآنِ الَّذِي هُوَ أَيْسَرُ الْعُلُومِ. We've been ordered to take care of the Quran, i.e. to revise the Quran, which is the easiest of sciences. That means anything else we need to revise. ورواه مسلم من حديث مالك به نحوه قال ابن عبد البر. The scholars of Islam say that there are two آفتان عظيمتان that comes between a طالب العلم and between memorization. They say the first problem is ترك رياضة القلب في الحفظ, not training yourself to memorize. فإن القلب آلة تقوى بتدريجها. You see, a heart is like a muscle. It becomes stronger the more you exercise it. فإذا أخذت شيئا فشيئا وردتها على الحفظ تهيأ لك من قوتي بعد ما لم يكن لك في الابتداء. The more you memorize and the more you take it, you train yourself to memorize, the easier on later things would become to memorize. ومن حسن الفعل المقرب للمنال أن تدرج نفسك إذا ابتدأت الحفظ فتبدأ بشيء يسير. Start with something small ثم ترقي نفسك إما بما تعلمه من قوتها أو بإرشاد معلمك الناصح، وهذا أكمل فتهيأ بعد مدة من قوة الحفظ لك ما لم يكن لك من قبل. Abu Hilal al-Askari rahimahullah mentions, he says in Hath al-Talib al-Ilm, the book encouraging to seek knowledge, أنه لما شرع يطلب العلم, when he started seeking knowledge كان يجد عناء في الحفظ, used to find it difficult to memorize. فيبقى مدة مديدة في شيء يسير, he would spend a long time memorizing something very small. فلم يزل يأخذ نفسه بالرياضة, but then he started training himself by memorizing something small. يدرج نفسه شيئا فشيئا في محفوظه تقريرا له وتأكيدا لأخذه, فيكرر مرات كثيرة حتى بلغ من قدرة الحفظ, so much so that he reached a level of حفظ that he memorized a poem of 300 baits, 300 verses في سحر واحد, in one morning. Why? Because he trained himself in memorization. So the first thing is we need to train ourselves by memorizing small bits every time. A small hadith here, a small piece of poetry over there. The second problem when it comes to memorization is, which I spoke about earlier on, is استطالة الطريق والاستعجال. Hastening and thinking If I'm going to memorize the Quran now, one verse at a time or two verses every day, it's going to take 100 years. No, it's too long. فتجد أحدهم هجاما المحفوظات فهو يحفظ هنا في ثلاث الأصول ثم يسمع مدعى حفظ الحديث يتحول إلى 40 النووية ثم يسمع ثالث يشكر حفظ معاني القرآن ويثني على أهله فيتحول إلى حفظ معاني القرآن. You find people jumping, I want to memorize Quran now, I want to memorize 40 hadith now, I want to memorize that book. No, you can't do it like that. You need to take it bits and bits, drip feed yourself when it comes to memorization. And that's why the scholars say, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says in his book Bada'i' al-Fawaid, he says, Man istata' al-tariq da'ufa mashyihu. Whoever looks at the path that's very long, he'll be unable to walk on that path. So those are two things. Trying to memorize everything at the same time and not training yourself by memorizing small bits and pieces. And number two, thinking it's like, you know what, it's too long. I want everything now. So one line, one hadith, take a portion of a hadith, memorize, then maybe tomorrow memorize it again, another portion of the hadith, etc. etc. قال ابن عبد البر في كتابه التمهيد عند هذا الحديث. Ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah ta'ala, which we spoke about him, the great Maliki scholar who was known as Hafidh al-Maghrib. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi was known as Hafidh al-Mashriq. Ibn Abdul Barr was known as Hafidh al-Maghrib, born in the year 368, died in the year 463. Abu Umar Yusuf bin Abdullah bin Muhammad bin Abdul Barr al-Qurtubi al-Maliki, famous Maliki scholar, Andalusi scholar. He wrote many books. From among those books, Al-Istidhkar, Al-Tamheed, both Al-Tamheed and Al-Istidhkar deal with the Muwatta of Imam Malik rahimahullah. They are connected to the Muwatta. And Al-Isti'ab is his book concerning fi Ma'rifat al-Ashab, about the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he wrote Al-Tamheed. This book, Al-Tamheed, lima fil Muwatta min al-Ma'ani wal-Asanid. The concentration of this commentary, this is a commentary on the Muwatta of Imam Malik. The concentration is on the Asanid. And then he had then he authored Al-Istidhkar, which is also a commentary on the Muwatta of Imam Malik, but it deals with Al-Jami' li madhahib fuqaha al-amsar wa ulama al-aqtar. He deals with the fiqh of the hadith. And then he's got this famous book, Jami'u Bayan al-Ilm wa Fadli, the compendium when it comes to what knowledge is and the virtue of knowledge. الاستيعاب في معرفة الأصحاب الإنصاف فيما في بسم الله من الخلاف الكافي فقه يعني famous Maliki text الكافي في فقه أهل المدينة الكافي in the fiqh of the people of Medina. Ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah ta'ala. The scholars say about him, Abu Ali al-Ghassani said لم يكن أحد ببلدنا في الحديث. There were no people in hadith in our lands like Qasim bin Muhammad, Ahmad bin Khalid, وَلَمْ يَكِنْ Ibn Abdul Barr. He says Ibn Abdul Barr was not less than them. وَلَا مُتَخَلِّفًا عَنْهُمَا. This person said the major scholars was Qasim bin Muhammad and Ahmad bin Khalid. And he says Ibn Abdul Barr wasn't less than them, meaning he was on their level. The famous Maliki scholar Abu al-Walid al-Baji says لَمْ يكن بالأندلس مثل Abu Umar bin it's supposed to be Abi. It's a mistake in the khat. مثل أبي عمر bin Abdul Barr في الحديث. There was no one in Andalus on the level of when it comes to hadith knowledge like that of Ibn Abdul Barr. He also said Abu Umar أحفظ أهل المغرب. He had the most knowledge of hadith and memorized the most hadith from the people of the Maghrib. وقال أبو عبد الله بن عبد الفتح كان أبو عمر أعلم من الأندلس في السنن والآثار واختلاف علماء الإمصار. He was the most knowledgeable person in Andalus, Muslim Spain, when it came to ahadith and the fiqh of the ulama on that ahadith. Imam Dhahabi rahimahullah says about him, وَكَانَ فِي أُصُولِ الدِّيَانَةِ عَلَى مَذْهَبِ السَّلَفِ. When it comes to his aqidah, he followed the way of the Salaf. وَلَمْ يَدْخُلْ فِي عِلْمِ الْكَلَامِ. He didn't engage in ilm al-kalam. بَلْ قَفَى آثَارَ مَشَايِخِ rahimahullah. Rather, he followed the ways of his teachers rahimahullah ta'ala. This is what Imam Dhahabi rahimahullah said, the great Shafi'i muhaddith. Okay. Let's continue inshallah. So he says, Ibn Abdul Barr says in his Kitab al-Tamheed, which is a commentary on the Muwatta of Imam Malik, عند هذا الحديث, when he commentates on this hadith which we have mentioned, he says, وَإِذَا كَانَ الْقُرْآنَ الْمُيَسَّرُ لِلذِّكْرِ. If the Quran al-Muyassar li-dhikri, al-Muyassar li-dhikri is the sifa of Quran. If the Quran, which has been made easy to memorize, is kal-ibli al-mu'allaqati, is like tied up camels, Man ta'ahadaha amsaka, whoever keeps it, whoever looks after it will keep it. فَكَيْفَ بِسَائِرِ الْعُلُومِ. Then what about all the other sciences? Meaning you should revise the other sciences. If the Quran, which has been made easy to memorize, can flee from you like a camel flees from you and you can lose it, what about all the other ulum that there is? You need to memorize it. You need to revise it. You need to revise it. Imam Az-Zuhri rahimahullah, we said, is one of the madar. He's a madar in the asanid of hadith. We spoke about him in last week's class. He said rahimahullah, إِنَّمَا يُذْهِبُ الْعِلْمَ النِّسْيَانِ. أذهب يذهب, idhab means to remove. What removes knowledge? النسيان. The maf'ul is muqaddam and the fa'il is mu'akhar. النسيان, forgetfulness, removes knowledge. And what also removes knowledge? وَتَرْكُ الْمُذَاكَرَةِ, and leaving off revision of knowledge. You need to revise knowledge. Whatever you've studied in your alimiyah, in your courses, your books that you've studied, you need to revise that. Because if you've spent 10 years not revising a subject, or 5 years, or 4 years, or 3 years, that knowledge is gone. That knowledge is gone. And Shaykh Sālih rahimahullah ta'ala says, he says, وَبِالسُّؤَال. Now he goes to point number 3. وَبِالسُّؤَالِ عَنِ الْعِلْمِ تُفْتَتَحْ خَزَائِنُهُ. And through asking about knowledge, khaza'in is the na'ib al-fa'il. تُفْتَتَحْ خَزَائِن. The treasures of knowledge, تُفْتَحْ is opened up. The treasures of knowledge is opened up. And he then says, Imam Zuhar rahimahullah, quotes Imam Zuhar rahimahullah again. Imam Zuhar rahimahullah said, إِنَّمَا هَذَا الْعِلْمُ خَزَائِنُ. This knowledge is what? It is treasures. وَتَفْتَتِحُهَا الْمَسْأَلَةِ. And what opens it up is questioning, asking questions to the people of knowledge. Why is it khaza'inu and not khaza'inun? Who can tell us? We're almost done, inshallah. I'm just going to finish this chapter tonight and then we'll stop. We're not going to the next one. We're stopping here. Who can tell us? Why is it khaza'inu? Riyaz, why is it khaza'inu and not khaza'inun? Why is it not? Because it's the khabar, and the khabar is, and it doesn't have, it's not mu'arraf bil lam, so it's supposed to be khaza'inun. So why is it khaza'inu? Anyone?
I'm not
Riyaz,
sure, Sheikh.
What do you say?
Not sure.
Okay, tell him, please. Anyone help him?
Is that غير منصرف?
It's غير منصرف. It can't get tanween. Can't get a tanween. Because we said any word that is on the pattern of mafa'il and mafa'il, fa'awil and fa'awil. So khaza'in is on that pattern, so it can't get a. And غير منصرف is divided into two, right? Those words that require one reason for it to be غير منصرف, and those words that require for it to have two reasons. So either it's a ismul alam and another reason, or it's a wasf, a sifa, and another reason. So this is from those words that require one reason to become غير منصرف. So this word khaza'inu can't get a kasra and can't get tanween. تفتتحها المسألة. Questions open knowledge. The author rahimahullah ta'ala continues and he says, the author rahimahullah ta'ala says, وحسن المسألة نصف العلم. Good questions, it is half of knowledge. حسن المسألة مضاف مضاف إليه. It's the مبتدا ونصف العلم خبر also مضاف مضاف إليه. Good questions is نصف العلم, it's half of knowledge. He says والسؤالات المصنفة. Now you get something called the kutub as-su'alat. The su'alat literature. So the su'alat literature are books, and if you go on Maktaba Shamila, right, you can just type in the su'alat. The su'alat of Sālih, the su'alat of Abdullah, the su'alat of Ibn Hani, the su'alat of Ishaq bin Mansur. It is basically books where the students would ask their teachers questions about hadith. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala was asked by his sons, Abdullah and Sālih, "Oh my father, what's your view on this rawi? And then his father would say, this rawi is weak, and they would write it down. Oh, my father, this hadith, this chain, is there something problematic with this chain? And they would write the answer down. And this became a genre of literature known as the su'alat literature. All right? So he says, good questions are half of knowledge. And he says, as an example of this is, وَالسُؤَالَاتِ الْمُصَنَّفَةِ, and the books of su'alat al-musannafa that were authored. كَمَسَائِل Ahmad al-marwiya anhu, such as the Masail of Ahmad. There's a book called the Masail of Ahmad that are narrated from him. These books, where the students ask their teachers certain questions about hadith, these are burhan jaliyun, a clear proof ala azimi manfa'ati su'al, that proves the great benefit of questioning. And that's why, so the author, rahimahullah, when he started the chapter, he said, memorization, mudhakara, and asking. And this is one of the greatest in Islamic history that we can see. The greatest benefits of asking questions is the fact that there's an entire literature based on this. There's an entire, there's an entire a body of literature based just on su'alat. Right? So Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah's son Sālih, whatever questions he asked, he would put it in there, pertaining to hadith, obviously. Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah's son Abdillāh as well. So the kutub su'alat in essence are books that deals with answers that students ask their teachers regarding the science of hadith, particular ruwat, particular chains of narrators and stuff like that. So there's lots of valuable information in there pertaining to certain rawis. Are they credible? Are they not credible? Are there any hidden defects with a particular hadith? Oh, my father, what's your view of this particular hadith? And we have many books like this that have reached us. Right? From Ibn al-Madini, from Ibn Ma'in, Darqutni, al-Hakim, the su'alat of Ibn Abi Shaybah, where he questioned Ali bin al-Madini, the su'alat of al-Bardha'i, where he asked Abu Zur'a al-Razi, the su'alat of al-Sulami, where he asked Darqutni, the su'alat of Abu Bakr, Ahmad bin Muhammad bin Hani al-Athram, where he asked Imam Ahmad, the Masail of Muhammad bin Uthman, where he asked Ibn Abi Shaybah. So there's many books, you can just do a shamila, do a search, kutub su'alat, and you'll find many. So he says, وَحُسْنُ الْمَسْأَلَةِ نِصْفُ الْعِلْمِ. Good questions are half of knowledge. وَالسُؤَالات الْمُصَنَّفَةِ. The authored su'alat, the authored questions, the su'alat literature, كَمَسَائِل Ahmad, such as the Masail Ahmad, al-marwiyati anhu. Al-marwiyah is the sifa of Masail. It's the sifa of Masail that are narrated from him. These type of books are burhanun jaliyun khabar. So that in everything that came before it is the mubtada, burhanun jaliyun. They are a great evidence ala azimi mudaf manfa'ati as-su'ali, of the great benefit of asking questions. وقلة الإقبال على العالم بالسؤال إذا ورد على بلد تكشف مبلغ العلم فيه. He says, Shaykh Sālih al-Usaymī rahimahullah says, وَقِلَّةُ الْإِقْبَالِ. قِلَّةُ الْإِقْبَالِ is مضاف مضاف إليه. The little attention given to a scholar بسؤال, with regards to asking questions, إذا ورد على بلد, when it comes to a city and a town, when scholars are not asked a lot of questions when they come to a particular place, تكشف, this exposes مبلغ العلم فيه, the level of knowledge in that place. So if an alim is not questioned a lot, it shows you the level of knowledge in that particular place, that people don't have much knowledge. That's why they don't know what to ask. So he says, وَقِلَّةُ الْإِقْبَالِ, the lack of attention على العالم, given to an alim بسؤال, in relation to questions, إذا ورد, if he comes على بلد, to a city, تكشف goes back to قلة. تكشف exposes مبلغ العلم فيه, the extent of knowledge in that city. فهذا سفيان الثوري, Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah ta'ala, who we quoted many times in the past. Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah ta'ala was one of the atba tabi'in. He didn't meet the Sahaba, he met the tabi'un. يقدم Asqalan. He came to a city called Asqalan. Who can tell me where's Asqalan? Anyone? Asqalan? It's in modern day. I'm not saying that other places name Palestine, inshallah. Yakdumu Asqalan. He came to Asqalan. It's a port city. It's not far from Gaza. فيمكث. That's why Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. He came to Asqalan. فيمكث ثلاثا. And he stayed there for 3 days. لا يسأله إنسان عن شيء. And no person asked him anything. Imagine this is a major hadith scholar. من أتباع تابعين. فيقول للرواد بن الجراح. He then said to his student رواد بن الجراح الشامي العسقلاني. Some scholars have criticized him as a hadith narrator, especially what he narrates from Sufyan al-Thawri. He was the teacher, this Sufyan al-Rawad bin al-Jarrah, he was the teacher of Ibn Ma'in, was the teacher of Imam al-Bukhari, he was the teacher of Ishaq bin Rahway, Abu Bakr bin Abi Shayba. But he's criticized, he's also criticized for his ikhtilat. Ikhtilat is when you, as you grow older, your memory lapses and you make lots of mistakes. Your dabt is brought into question. Now, there's many reasons why scholars get ikhtilat. Some scholars have mental breakdowns. Their memories are affected. Some scholars lose their books. Their books are burnt out. Some scholars, because of old age, they become senile, whatever. So he reached that level. And so many scholars criticize this hadith. So Sufyan al-Thawri said to Rawad bin al-Jarrah, أحد أصحابه, one of his students, he said, اكتر لي أخرج من هذا البلد. اكتر لي. What's the meaning of the word اكتر? ما معنى اكتر?
استعجر من.
The meaning of the word اكتر is استأجر. So what's the root of the word?
كاف رايا.
كاف يا كاف
رايا. رايا.
So that means the verb is on bab افتعل يفتعل. The verb is on the bab of. So he says iktar, you know, hire me someone. Iktar li. أخرج. That's the jawab of iktar. لي من هذا أخرج من هذا البلد. I want to leave the city. هذا بلد. This is a city يموت فيه العلم. In which knowledge has died. Subhanallah. In which knowledge has died. Just want to check something quickly. So if it's going to be this verb iktar, if it comes from the verb iktara yaktari, then it's technically supposed to be iktari. iktari. اكتر لي أخرج من هذا البلد. هذا بلد يموت فيه العلم. This is a place in which knowledge has died. Alright? So just one faida, one point of benefit. There's two famous Sufyans that you always hear about. There's Sufyan al-Thawri and there's Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Now, sometimes it becomes difficult to distinguish between the two of them because sometimes in the books of hadith they'll say قال سفيان or حدثنا سفيان or أخبرنا سفيان. Then you don't know which one it is referring to. Is it referring to Sufyan al-Thawri or Sufyan ibn Uyayna? Remember, both of them were min atba tabi'in. They were basically in the same time frame. They share lots of teachers and they share many students as well. Sufyan al-Thawri is Sufyan bin Sa'id bin Masruq al-Thawri. Born in the year 97 and died in the year 161. a Kufan scholar. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, born in the year 107 and died in the year 198, also min atba' tabi'in, also from Kufa, but lived and died in Mecca. So the problem comes is when their names are left muhmal, because they come in the same, they are mu'asirun, they are contemporaries of each other. They share many teachers and students, right? And so the scholars have, worked out, they've given us lots of qawa'id. These are actually books written on this. Qawa'id at-tamyiz bayna sufyanain. Rules how to distinguish between the two Sufyans in a sanad. Now remember, both of them are considered thick and reliable, so it doesn't really matter. But if we want, for other reasons, all right, we want to know, we want to make a distinction between the two of them, then there are certain qawa'id. And like that, like example, when Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah says Abdullah, among the Sahaba, then he's referring to Abdullah bin Mas'ud. So some scholars have their own way that they use a particular person's name. So example, if Al-Hasan is used among the Sahaba, then it refers to the Prophet's grandson, Al-Hasan bin Ali. If Al-Hasan is used among the Tabi'un, then it refers to Hasan al-Basri. So you have to check who is Al-Hasan, because you'll see in a book, Qal Al-Hasan. Right? And Allah knows best. So the author rahimahullah ends off this chapter by saying, فَمَنْ لَقِيَ شَيْخًا, whoever meets a teacher, جواب شرط, فَمَنْ, that's the shart, فَلْيَغْتَنِمْ لِقَاءَهُ بِسُؤَالٍ, let him benefit from meeting him بسؤال, by asking questions, عَمَّا يُشْكِلُ عَلَيْهِ, regarding that which ashkala yushkilu, that which, confuses him, that which is ambiguous to him, وَيَحْتَاجِ إِلَيْهِ, that which he needs. لَا سُؤَالَ متعنت ممتحن فليغتنم لقاءه بالسؤال, let him not ask سؤال متعنت, the question of someone who wants to be difficult, ممتحن, and someone who wants to test your knowledge, and someone who wants to test your knowledge. Subhanallah. And then the author rahimahullah ta'ala goes on and he says, وهذه المعاني الثلاثة للعلم, and this year is a paraphrasing. Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala mentions this, but the author has paraphrased it in his own words. وهذه المعاني الثلاثة للعلم, these three concepts with regards to knowledge, بمنزلة الغرس للشجر وسقيه وتنميته, is the same as al-ghars للشجر, planting a tree, وسقيه, watering the tree, وتنميته, and making it grow. So planting, that's the memorization. You're planting knowledge in your brain. Watering it, you're revising it with your colleagues. Tanmiyati, making it grow, that is asking questions about it. So he says, وهذه المعاني الثلاثة للعلم بمنزلة الغرس لشجر وسقيه وتنميته بما يحفظ قوته ويدفع آفته. It preserves the strength of his knowledge, and it removes the afa, the defects of his knowledge. فالحفظ غرس العلم. Knowledge is, memorization is the planting of knowledge. والمذاكرة سقيه, revising it is watering it. وسؤال عنه, and asking questions about it is تنميته, making it, nurturing it, and making it grow. This here is, Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala mentions this in his book. It's late now, that's why I can't. On his book on Talab al-Ilm, on the virtues of Talab al-Ilm. Check the name. Ibn Rajab mentions this in his book. Kutub Ibn Rajab, Mu'allafat. Nope. فضل علم السلف على علم الخلف. فضل علم السلف, the virtue of the knowledge of the predecessors, على علم الخلف. He mentions this exact point. وهذه المعاني ثلاثة للعلم بمنزلة الغرس لشجر وسقيه وتنميته بما يحفظ قوته ويدفع آفته. فالحفظ غرس العلم والمذاكرة. فالحفظ مبتدأ، غرس العلم خبر، والمذاكرة مبتدأ، سقيه خبر، والسؤال عنه مبتدأ، تنميته خبر. Jazakumullah khairan, brothers. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop there for tonight. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant us tawfiq and understanding.